Hello, welcome to Michael's Business English, the school for non-native English-speaking professionals. In today's class, I want to talk about what to do when you don't have experience for the job you want. This is a pretty common issue, regardless of where you are in your career, even if you are somewhat experienced in the corporate world. It is more of an issue for postgrads. If you just got out of college, it's very unlikely you're going to have the work experience that so many employers claim you need. And this is especially a problem if you need sponsorship because it's always been competitive and it's getting more challenging due to the Trump administration adjustments to the visa. Well, don't worry, because I do have a couple of ideas for you to try out. First, I strongly recommend you find a way to get the experience you need. Now, I know that sounds obvious, but stick with me for a minute. Did you know that most of the technical skills that you need can be found on YouTube and Google? Even something like SAS, which is business intelligence software, you can learn that online for free. You don't need to go back to school. You don't need to get experience on the job. You can learn all of it on the computer. This applies to most of the commonly required skills I see in my industry, such as using Excel, Access, SQL, and Tableau. You can get 90% of the stuff for free. And in some cases, you could buy the course if you really want to, but I've never felt the need to purchase courses before I got the job I wanted. This applies to softer skills like learning how to interview better too. Again, most of the content is free. I saw a video recently on how to use Adobe Photoshop software, so I think the sky's the limit. Another option, which is, this one might be more obvious, but it's actions like volunteering, internships, or doing things for free. I think everyone has their opinion about this depending on who you're spending time following on social media. My personal opinion is that this should be a last resort. Time spent volunteering and internships to get experience doesn't necessarily translate very well to the workplace. As an example, I volunteered to teach English, and I did it as part of my requirement to get my teaching certificate. I tried teaching online, but there were so many problems, so it didn't work for me at the time, which is why I volunteered. But my problem volunteering is that it did not really prepare me to teach English in a classroom setting. That's entirely my fault. I didn't do a good job of selecting my employers for volunteering. I also know people who had the opposite experience, and they started out as interns, and they used that experience to get a job in the company and get promoted in that company. Last I checked, one of these girls got a role as the vice president. So even though I don't recommend doing things for free, if you don't have to, be aware that it's possible that it can work in your favor. Now, there is one last point I want to mention before I end this video, and that is you should be prepared to interview for roles despite not having all or even most of the experience that is required. This is a common theme I've noticed where recruiters will try to have me interview for roles when I don't have the experience. As an example, a few years ago, I got approached for a job that required Microsoft Access experience, and I had never used it before. I ended up getting that job offer. I noticed a common trend in every interview I've had where I got a job offer despite my lack of certain experience I needed. That trend is that I demonstrated in some way how I could or would get that experience so I could hit the ground running from day one. I also found it really helpful if you can find a way to take your past experience and relate it to how you could use that to solve the employer's problems. So as an example, in my interview last year, they told me that one of their projects they're working on involved transferring responsibility over to a new team. So I talked about how I built quality assurance processes to test the output of staff augmentation in a previous role. And I offered suggestions on how I could build a similar process to test the output of this new team to ensure they are doing things correctly. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave me a comment if you have questions or send me a DM on Instagram if you want to run something by me.